Sometimes I focus on artsy or kinetic projects, but I forget the purpose of my own channel. So after making a new dining table for my oldest daughter, I then asked my youngest daughter if she might want anything. And that's when she told me about her cheesy particle board home office desk that was too small and starting to fall apart. She had looked at a bunch of different designs, but kind of liked this growing diamond pattern from what looked like a rustic patio table. And she also liked this rustic style of table legs, but only if they could be stained or painted black. The problem with a loosely jointed board design like this is that pens are likely to catch a joint line or even puncture the paper. I've clearly got some design and problem solving work ahead of me here. Since there's a lot of end grain joints with this design, I thought it best to mount the desktop cuts on a backer sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. This will help stabilize all those cuts during glue up and then help to keep everything flat. I cut the plywood down to what would be the final outer dimensions of the desktop minus 1.5 inches, and that'll allow for the addition of a 3/4 inch piece of oak trim around the perimeter to finish the desktop. Normally I would save some money and buy thicker rough sawn lumber for the top, but I think that might wind up being too thick and heavy to be practical. That, or I would wind up wasting much of that thickness by planing it all down to a manageable size. In the end, I chose to make another donation again to Lonard's Depot for 3/4 inch sanded oak instead. Lonard's Depot. We probably have it, but it's going to cost you. Finished in sanded lumber from a home center is already its own oxymoron because it really isn't finished sanded or even cut straight to be used as a finished piece of wood. So each plank had to be cut and the edges trued up at 90 degrees on the table saw, and of course it would all need a lot more sanding once fitted. I cut a center square and that was placed in the middle of the table and then surrounded by a thin piece of black wenge hardwood for a little more flair.
We need to talk about your flare.
Hey, it's not 15 pieces of flare, but I like how it looks. From here, the tabletop construction became an exercise in cutting a series of 5-inch wide boards into frames stemming out from that center square. The mitered corner frames were then glued down onto the plywood, and since traditional clamping methods couldn't really be used so far away from the center of the desktop, I had to employ a series of weights to press everything down a board at a time. Then I just moved on to the next series of 45-degree cuts, eventually trying to come up with more inventive ways to weigh down those boards, even including a highly technical method involving a 5-gallon firehouse pickle bucket and water. I proudly call this my crap clamping system. Clamps replaced affordably by pickle buckets. I also used a 4-corner band clamp to help pull the edges together, and after the glue dried, it was off to the next series of miter cuts, building out the full diameter of the top. With all the boards fitted and glued, I had to make final trims on the desktop using a circular saw for the ends, and then adding a straight edge to help trim up the long sides on the table saw. To trim up the edges of the tabletop, I ripped down some additional oak stock to 1.25 inches and took my time on the corner cuts to get them to fit tightly. I glued those up on the ends of the top first and then clamped the longer lengths to finish the outer frame. This is where I found myself fighting the urge to hit that easy button.
That was easy.
And just attach that oak trim with a nail gun. I'm not a fan of using brads or nails on a furniture build like this, so once the glue was dry, I used some 5/16 inch dowels on the outer trim to make the entire top one solid piece. I did actually find an easier way to install the dowels though you need a well-trained finger. Now we're off to leg design. Since home center oak was pricey enough, I thought pine would be just fine for the legs. She wanted them to be completely black anyway, so something with nicer looking wood grain wouldn't really matter. That, and if you pay a couple extra bucks for the super premium 2x4 lumber, it comes kiln dried with very few knots or rough edges. Once trimmed up, these will work really well for the thicker design that she liked. I played around with the dimensions and angles a bit on a working sheet of paper first, and that was enough to begin making cuts for the leg assemblies. I tried to use pieces from each 2x4 that were free from blemishes, but I still had to plane off all 4 sides to make sure the pieces would be clean and square and ready for glue up as the assembly progressed. In general, I'm not in favor of using pine or any softwood for a furniture build, but pine fits the rustic style of these legs pretty well. Those angled strut supports for each leg were based on a 30-60-90 right triangle, so it would take a 60-degree cut to sit flat on the top or bottom piece and a 30-degree cut to meet the upright post in the middle. You'll see how they come together here in a second, but first I did the glue up on the thicker pieces of the leg, which included a couple of 45-degree trim cuts for the base. The vertical posts were doubled up and glued together, and it worked out so that I could stack up all of those glued pieces and then clamp them at the same time. After the glue dried, the post now sits nice and square on the base, and you can see how those angled struts will fit to support the entire leg structure. It'll be a pretty beefy and stable leg to support this desktop. I caved in a bit on that whole no metal hardware mantra, especially when it came to attaching the center post to the base and top, because even though it is easier, long construction screws will do a great job clamping the post flat to the base during the glue up. I could actually remove all that hardware after I glue and dowel the angled struts in place, but I don't know. Wood screws are called wood screws for a reason, so maybe we'll just leave this one alone. The angled struts were simply glued in place and then held with some tension using painter's tape. I'm not relying on the glue to hold this joint, but I want it to be dry so that I can permanently pin all the joints together with wooden dowels. Tape simply holds those odd angled joints in place until it was fully cured. And waiting is always the hardest part. The next morning, after I put on my pants, it was unwrapping day. I should probably mention that there are at least 2 things you shouldn't really do without wearing clothes: woodworking with power tools and frying bacon. Though the joints were glued, they really aren't all that rock solid. So this is where I'll add those wooden dowels to more permanently pin the angled braces to the post. I marked up center lines for the drill and made a series of 5/16 inch holes deep enough to bury the dowel at least an inch into the post. Once again, I employed a little woodshop magic to finish the dowel assembly. Now that the bulk of the fabrication was done on the desktop and the legs, it was time for a little edge routing, sanding, and finishing. I'm going to jump in here and talk about how much I dislike this stain. My daughter picked out the color, but she didn't know, and I didn't know until purchase, that it was a water-based stain, which basically acts like paint that dries in under 2 minutes. Following the instructions, you're told to brush it on and wipe it off immediately in the direction of the wood grain. Why that fast? Because it dries that fast, and when you try to wipe it off, it leaves faint streaks behind. Maybe that's fine when the streaks follow the wood grain, but looks sketchy when all of your wood grain runs in different directions like this tabletop. In the end, I had to sand it all off and do the stain 1/4 section at a time, wiping it off quickly along the grain and touching it up as I went along. I am not a fan of this water-based product. Here's the finished top compared against a piece of white melamine and some unfinished red oak. In the end, it came out okay, still showing the oak wood grain and an overall rustic look, which is what my daughter wanted. My son Matt jumped in to help paint the legs in a matte black, which should pair pretty well with the color of the top. I should also mention that while this is a desktop, the whole design can just as easily be expanded to be any table size you might want. Longer table lengths might need a trestle between the legs for some added lateral stability, but otherwise you're good to go. Final assembly was a simple attachment of the wider oak leg top plate with some decent wood screws, though you could also use brass threaded inserts on the tabletop and 1/4 bolts for the final attachment. Despite my battle with this wood stain, the finished project is indeed rustic looking, built like a tank, and looks pretty great. Early pictures sent to my daughter earned me a big thumbs up, and she plans to pick up the desk this coming weekend. It will definitely hold up better than any of the sawdust or vinyl covered specials she could buy from IKEA, Walmart, or most every other online furniture supplier. Oh, and it gets the family discount too. 1 mandatory hug and some chocolate chip cookies on her next visit. Hey everybody, thanks for watching and tuning into our channel. We don't really push for subscriptions or carry any sponsors, so you giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel really do help us out. Thanks very much for your support, and take care. So I looked at the sample color that she picked out. It looks kind of like a charcoal gray. No.
I picked it out. I just went in and says I want black, and he's like, "Is this?" He's like, "That's it."
Okay.
So there's black. There's like midnight black, which is like deep space black, which is
Yeah. I can see it's got, just looking at the wet paint in the bucket, it's got a little bit of blue in it, a little bit of gray.
It's got a blue. Well, we might get away with 2 coats, and it's going on pretty good.
Coverage looks good.
Yeah. It's just something I've learned over the last year. Get what you pay for.
Just to be clear, we're not sponsored by these guys, but the paint's pretty decent.
She wanted matte finish. That's why we're not doing satin. If it was satin finish, we'd use the urethane stuff.
So this is going to be pretty flat.
It's, matte.
No sheen.
No, tiny bit, but that'll be useful.
Well, we always strive to give the customer what they want, even if it's family.
This is the brush I used for cabinets. Jesse. Expensive little guy. Yeah, this is gonna go a long way. Yeah, this is gonna go on in 2 coats.
By the way, I watched that entire Red Wings game last night. I know.
I don't even watch them anymore. Yeah. I heard Little Caesars was crazy though, because everybody came over from the football game.
Lions game.
Yeah, double headers usually gets filled up.
Or the costumes in the crowd too.
Costumes.
Yeah, for Halloween.
Oh.
Although I know they have. So I talked about delivery, but she may actually come out with the pickup truck and Tim.